Hello everyone and welcome to another Muffin video. Before we dive in here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell and drop a like on the video too if you're enjoying the content. Don't forget to join our Discord server as well if you're not already there. The link is in the description down below. We've also activated our channel membership, which comes with all kinds of perks, so check that out if you're interested in joining. Speaking of channel membership, I do want to take a moment to give a special shout out to our current members. So thanks to all of you, and I hope you're enjoying the benefits. And finally, a reminder that all comments on every video will be automatically entered into our weekly giveaways, and winners will be randomly selected by our bot and announced every Monday. So good luck, and let's get this started. So we have recently gotten a clear on the latest trial in the game, that is trial number 15, Siege of the Wasteland Lair, specifically the risk difficulty. Now this is actually one of the easier trials that you will encounter in the game, and I'm going to explain the mechanics now, and as before we'll take a look at how they're written in the details, and then we'll dive in and look at the clear video right after that. So let's take a look now and see what kind of mechanics you will have to deal with in this fight. So the boss, Armored Burning Saw Machine, it is a boss that does not have any ads or anything to deal with, which is the first time in a while since the last few trials have had ads in the fight. It is a boss that has a single HP bar. It's not like a 2x HP bar of any kind. And let's understand how the mechanics of this boss work. So this boss, like I said, is relatively straightforward, and the main mechanic is actually going to be managing your debuff stacks. So the boss applies these stacks of decay, and these stacks, when they are on you, deal damage over time, and as the stacks increase, it starts to deal a lot of damage over time. So at certain thresholds, the DPS and the healer and the tank will be clearing those debuffs. So let's take a look at the mechanics, the rest of the mechanics, and how they play back into that core system. So saw at full strength, the saw machine precisely locates weak points and leaps towards a random target, deal a large amount of damage and inflict 10 stacks of decay. So this is a very important ability for especially the tank to keep in mind. The way this will work, you will see him cast up this ability and then he will jump and attack somebody. The second he is landed from his jump, immediately war cry to taunt the boss, because if you don't, he will start attacking that player and deal a lot of damage to them. In addition, the healer should be prepared to use barrier for this ability as well, and you should have it on off of cooldown anytime this ability comes up, because if you do not have barrier, there's a high chance this ability will one-shot the DPS or even the healer, whoever gets targeted. Now, as this does apply 10 stacks of decay, if you are a DPS or healer that gets targeted by this, you're going to need to immediately look at your stacks, and if you see it suddenly go up by 10, you're going to have to clear your debuffs immediately. It's a good time now to explain how you clear your debuffs. You're going to have these snow lotuses, which are flowers, and 3 new flowers will spawn every 24 seconds, and when you click on them, you'll see a little hand icon making a tapping icon. When you click on one of those, it removes all these stacks of decay you have. Now these snow lotuses, these flowers do expire, and you'll see a little blue circle going around, and when that circle reaches to the end, it will expire, so make sure you keep that in mind. Now let's continue with the rest of the abilities before jumping right into the video and showcasing how this works in practice. So next up we have the Great Whirlwind, which is another very important ability. So the saw machine activates a high-speed cutting mode every 1 second. Deal massive damage to all targets, and each damage adds 1 stack of decay. So this is a very, very important ability that needs to get interrupted as quickly as possible. A general rule of thumb is if you can interrupt this as within like 1 second, basically within 1 second, you'll only get a single stack of decay, which is the ideal target. If you're an interrupter, which should be your one of your 2 DPS, both DPS do not need to run interrupt, just 1 DPS, because the cooldown of this ability is enough that you're always going to have your interrupt back and available for this ability. So you basically, the faster you interrupt this, the less stacks of decay you're going to get. So if you can get 1 stack, that's perfect. If you can get 2 stacks, that's okay. And 3 stacks means you messed something up and you weren't fast enough. So try to always make sure that you're getting ideally only 1 stack of decay from interrupting this, or 2 stacks. Maybe you have a bit of ping or something like that. That's also acceptable. Now this is another very important consideration. At the end of the boss, when the boss is at 3%, he triggers a special ability called Database Explosion. If you do not burst the boss down from 3% to 0%, he will basically one-shot everyone. So you have to absolutely save when you have the boss below, say, I don't know what a good, it depends on your party DPS, you know, maybe 10%, depending on how much damage you have. At around 10%, take your DPS should take your awakening off of auto. Take it off of auto and save it. When you see the boss hit 3%, trigger your awakening. Both DPS should trigger their awakening and burst the boss down. Now the DPS that's running interrupt might have time to swap their interrupt to a damaging ability, but it's honestly a little bit risky, and I would probably just see if you can burst it down while having the interrupt on your bar. It should be fine with 2 DPS popping your awakening, and basically try to get the boss down in that time frame. If you do, you win. Then wood carving roll, as you can see here, is basically a boss attack. A tank attack. This will attack the tank and apply DK. Now, before we dive into the video, one thing to keep in mind is, if you want to know when you need to clear debuffs, if you're a DPS or a healer, you need to clear debuffs at 4 stacks. Once you see your number is 4 or above, click on a flower and clear your stacks. If you are the tank and only the tank, you're going to clear your debuffs at 20 stacks. So once you see 20 stacks, then you're going to clear your debuff. However, if you are the tank and you see that there is a flower that is about to expire, there is nothing stopping you from clicking on that flower before it disappears to clear your debuffs anyway, because that will reduce the overall damage you're taking and make your life easier and the healer's life easier. So just keep in mind, if you see a flower about to expire as a tank, don't feel bad about clicking on it. And the same as the DPS as well. If you see there's like 2 expiring flowers, probably the tank's going to click one and you can click the other. It's not the end of the world, and it's actually going to reduce your overall damage taken, which is going to be really good for the fight. So with all of that explained, let's now jump into the video and take a look at how this fight plays out in practice. Here we have the start of the fight, and you can see I'm running interrupt, and Natasha, the other DPS, does not have any interrupt. She's going full DPS. And as there's a, okay, so there we go. I'm just going to go back for a second. There you have the Great Whirlwind. You'll see the boss actually do a little animation before it starts, and you see I interrupted it right away. And right now I'll pause for a second. Underneath my HP bar here, you will see that there is on the far left side of the debuff and buff list, there is a little red debuff. That is the debuff that you should be tracking to see how many stacks that you have. That is the most important thing. Because I interrupted that ability almost instantly, we only got a single debuff stack, which is the best case scenario from that ability. So generally speaking, the boss will see. So yeah, it uses the... So let me just pause. Let me go back for a second. So the boss used the interruptible Great Whirlwind, then used Saw at full strength. Generally speaking, the boss tends to follow a pretty regular pattern when it comes to its attacks, which you will pick up as you watch the fight here. But here we have Saw at full strength. You see the boss charges up, then it leaps. Now, you see once it's landed, this is when your tank should be popping Warcry to get the tank. You can see Warcry, and the boss is no longer targeting me. Now I got targeted here. You can see my stacks jumped up to 11. You can actually see the transition. The boss is here. I have 1 stack. The boss jumps on me. I now have 11 stacks. Now once you have a very high number of stacks, you have to quickly look for the flowers there. They've spawned. These are the flowers, the snow lotus we were talking about, and I immediately clicked one to clear my stacks, and you can see here, if you look, I have no more debuffs. So by clicking on the flower, the debuffs are now gone. So that means that I'm no longer taking damage for the debuff, and I'm good to go again. So it's very important, if you get targeted by the jump, if you let yourself sit at 10 plus debuffs for more than a couple seconds, you will probably die from it. So just be very careful and always pay attention to your debuffs. And if you get targeted by the leap, be ready to click a flower right away so you don't die in like 2 or 3 seconds. So this is basically, so there you go, another interrupt. Again, managed to get it with only one debuff. This is the fight. That's pretty much the whole fight. It's just going to be repeating that, managing your debuffs, healer using barrier for whenever it uses the leap ability, tank being ready to, saw it full strength, so healer had barriered that, the tank taunted with Warcry, and I clicked on a flower to clear my debuffs. Got another interrupt in. And you can see there the timing of that is that I was like, okay, wait, I gotta click on the flower, and then pretty soon after that was already another interrupt. So you have to always be ready. If you're the DPS on interrupt duty, you should always be ready. You see, I actually have my mouse cursor always hovering over the interrupt button, ready to interrupt as soon as I see the blue bar show up. It's safer, honestly, to wait for the blue bar to show up rather than looking at any other visual tell. I tried just like looking for animations and particle effects to follow instead of the blue bar, and honestly, because there are some similar looking attacks, I just decided it's easier just to wait for the blue bar and hope your reaction speed is enough to basically kill it right away. So as you can see here, there is a flower that's about to expire, and it just expired. Nobody actually took that one, which arguably the tank probably should have clicked it before it went away, but that's not the end of the world. As you can see, we are surviving. So here's another saw at full strength, and it's on me again, and I click that right away. You can see my health is so low. If it wasn't for the barrier, I would be dead. There was a little delay. Now you can see here, I was slightly delayed with his interrupt, and we got 2 stacks. That tiny little delay to get the interrupt off is already enough to go from 1 to 2 stacks. So that's why I'm telling you, you got to be really quick if you're on interrupt duty, because just that tiny little edge of a delay is already enough to go from 1 to 2 debuffs. So now, again, I got another 1 debuff interrupt, and the fight's going to basically continue on like this. So you can see here there was one about to interrupt, nobody was clicking on it, so I clicked on it to clear my debuffs. Now from a DPS perspective, because of the heavy burst requirement in at 3% when the boss casts that ability, I would strongly recommend both DPS run Bladehound, because that way you will be dealing additional damage to the boss when it's under 50% HP. Not only will it make your fight faster under 50% HP, but when it comes to that super critical 3% burst phase, having that extra damage is going to help a lot, because it is a pretty tight window in order to deal enough damage to get the boss dead in that time period. So again, another very fast interrupt there with only 1 debuff. Now this is definitely, I would say, it's a pretty healing intensive fight. You're definitely gonna feel the effects of having maybe an undergeed. So that was another pretty bad one. So you can see here that was actually not a good interrupt. That took too long, but that's fine. We're all within normal bounds. I've been targeted a lot by the leap this fight. Normally it's just random. It doesn't always pick melee DPS, for example. It's jumping all over the place. So we're down to 43%. And you can see Natasha had written in the chat to take expiring flowers as a reminder to those who maybe forgot. Now look at this, we have 6 flowers on the board. No reason not to use the ones in the back there. Again, a little bit slow on that interrupt, 2 debuffs. Not the end of the world, but a little sloppy. Expiring flowers here. Gonna grab one, or someone else grabbed it, which is fine. Here we have another leap, and guess what? It's on me again. And you can see here, I instantly clicked on the flower, and that is the right thing to do there, so you don't take huge amounts of damage from having those high debuffs. Getting into sub 20% territory soon. Finally, it jumped onto someone else that wasn't me. So now we're getting into close to the end of the fight here. We're going to be sub 10% shortly. Still have to be ready to interrupt here, which is why I had said for DPS it might not be worth swapping to a third DPS ability. If you're the interrupter, it might be worth keeping a hold of that there. So you can see here I disabled the auto use of Awakening and keeping it ready so that whenever the boss does reach 3%, there you can see, this is the thing, there was another interrupt there, so you're pretty much going to leave the interrupt on the bar. There's no reason to take it off, because you will potentially wipe chasing more DPS. So here we are, 4%, the boss is about to hit 3%, and in a second we're going to pop Awakening right now, boom. And then now you can see there's the burst, and look at how fast that bar is going up, and we managed to kill it at exactly the 50% mark, so we had a margin of around 50% with which to kill the boss. So there you have it. That is the complete fight of T15. I hope you found this video helpful, and good luck to you in your clears. And yeah, that's it. See you in the next video. Take care, everyone. Bye now.